The heartbeat of any firehouse across the city of New York is the kitchen table. It's where we break bread, break balls, and break everything in between. They say all the world's problems can be solved at a firehouse kitchen table. I don't know how true that is, but what I do know, it's what I miss the most. Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to the kitchen table. If you've been following the podcast and the channel, you guys know me. I'm Kenny D. And thank you so much for the support. I appreciate everybody checking it out on the streaming services and on YouTube. Thank you guys for the support. If you are new to this channel, this is a channel to bring mental health awareness in the first responder community. But it is not exclusive to first responders. I only say that because I have 30 plus years of first responder experience as military, law enforcement, and fire department experience. I'm now retired 2 years from the FDNY. But like I said, it's not just for first responders. It's for everybody. Everybody or anybody who's experienced thoughts of suicide, depression, anxiety, PTSD. I'm trying to get the word out. I'm trying to build a community. I'm trying to help people. I always say make a phone call. Reach out. My therapy was the kitchen table in the firehouse. So it doesn't matter who you are. Man, woman, first responder, civilian, race, color, or creed. There's always a seat at my kitchen table. Thank you guys for joining me if you're first checking it out. So I like to say I've been trying to preach this message about mental health awareness through my experiences and my stories and my issues with mental health. I've been depressed, sad, suicidal, all of the above. But I went many, many, many years without saying a word, suffering in silence. And that's the wrong thing to do. And now that I'm retired and I do have a side job, but I've had all this time to reflect and think about things. And now I'm in such a better place. I wanted to reach out. I wanted to give back and try and help as many people as I could by having them talk about it, by having them opening up and reaching out for help, whether it's therapy, whatever the case may be, talking to a friend or talking to somebody. This is what I'm trying to do. And I hope I can get the message out there with your help, of course. So what I've been doing, my first 10 or 12 episodes, it was just me telling you my feelings and telling some stories. And I'm going to keep doing that because I like telling stories and I have some pretty good ones. But now, because I don't want to sound like I'm talking out of my ass, I started doing some research. I started really trying to look at numbers, and I'm just in the infantile stages of that. I think the last episode, this is probably going to be episode 15. But a side note, I'm very excited about this one because this is the first one where the audio should be better on the podcast and on YouTube. Now I got look, the sun is shining. The sun just came out. It's a beautiful day. So I'm pretty excited about the audio now on this. So hopefully you guys, it sounds good to you guys. And hopefully as I grow the channel, things will get better audio-wise, camera-wise, editing-wise. I try not to edit things because I feel like if I edit things too much, it sounds ingenuine. I'm probably one of the most honest people out there. I'll say anything. I'll admit anything. Transparency on this channel and this podcast is number one to me. I'm telling you guys the truth. I'm telling it like it is, as I remember it, and that's just how it is. That's how I am. So I try to limit my editing. Plus, I'm not really that good at it yet, but I'll get there. But anyway, I've been checking out some statistics, and I believe I had some statistics on the last episode, if you've listened or watched, about how many suicides are in the first responder community, how there's more suicides than there are line of duty deaths, and that's in the fire department and police. So that was unacceptable. But I found another thing from a website called gems.com, and that's the Journal of Emergency Medical Service. And they sent out a survey, and this survey was done by, I got some papers here, by Robert Chalmers. He's an EMT and paramedic, and a Jeffrey Alexander, PhD. I guess he's a doctor. Anyway, they sent out a survey to 1,300 first responders in Florida, I believe. A mix of first responders. They sent out this survey, I guess through email, to cops, firemen, paramedics, and they say corrections, but I put corrections in law enforcement. Corrections officers are cops to me. So cops, firemen, paramedics. 1,300 was sent out, but only 434 were filled out and returned. That tells me that's only 34%. That tells me that most people either don't give a shit, are in denial, don't think it's a problem, or don't want to talk about it. And that's part of the problem. More than half the people that this survey was sent out to ignored it. And I feel like that's reflects with the society today. Most people want to ignore this stuff. And I think the reason why people ignore it is you can't see mental health issues. You can't see what's going on in somebody's mind. They look okay, they smile, they walk around, they do their job. You can't see what's going on. If somebody's got a broken leg or they're in a wheelchair or on crutches or got a broken arm or whatever the case may be, you can see that. You can see that physical illness or that physical whatever. And you ask them, hey, you okay? How's it going? What's going on with you? You can see that. For mentally ill people, and I hate to say mentally ill, but for people who are struggling with depression, PTSD, anxiety, you can't see that. It's hard to spot. So that's something to be really, really aware of. Like more than half of these people ignored this survey, and that reflects the general public, I believe. But the survey was about how they dealt with and how did they cope, and if they told their job about depression, anxiety, PTSD, thoughts of suicide, and alcohol as a coping mechanism. So the first one was there's only 3 graphs that I'm gonna talk about because I don't want this to be too long because I got another story that I want to get into. So the first one was right if they sought treatment for these conditions, and PTSD, anxiety, and depression, the overwhelming majority sought treatment for these. These seem to be something that they can talk about, at least this group of people. PTSD, anxiety, and depression. The one that was very, very low was suicidal ideologies. People don't want to talk about that. Suicide seems to be the dirty word in this whole mix of mental health awareness. People can admit that they're depressed or that they have anxiety or that they have depression or PTSD, but they don't want to admit that they had thoughts of suicide. So that's something to be aware of. The second one was alcohol consumption as a coping mechanism for all these things. And the overwhelming majority said that they didn't use alcohol as a coping mechanism, which I don't know for sure. It seems like, I don't know, a lot of people that I know that have been through this shit used alcohol as a coping mechanism. I certainly did. I was drinking all the time to feel better, to hide my feelings, to fucking just deal with shit, to run away from all this stuff. I was using so much alcohol. So I kind of believe that this is a little bit low too. I think what I'm trying to get at here, what I'm feeling in this survey is people aren't being truthful about it. People are still walking around in denial, or they just don't want to admit it. And that comes in with this third graph that they have here. It's if they withheld information from an employer about PTSD, anxiety, depression, and thoughts of suicide, and alcohol as a coping mechanism. And the overwhelming majority, I mean, I'm talking fucking overwhelming, said that they did not withhold information, which I absolutely believe that's bullshit. Because I think that everybody withholds information. Most people, because they are in fear of losing their job, especially in the first responder community. If you're a cop and you carry a gun and you're charged, you're supposed to fucking enforce the law and know all this shit, and you admit that you have thoughts of suicide or that you're depressed, you think they're going to take your gun and put you in a rubber room somewhere for a while. So I can understand why people do not tell their employer that they're having these problems. But that is a problem. For people to be in fear of losing their job because they're having these feelings, they're having this post-traumatic stress disorder, they're having this anxiety or depression, it's unacceptable. We have to have more of a dialogue with our employers in the first responder community. So this is all part of what I'm trying to get out there. At the end, they had like an open-ended, and this is kind of funny because this kind of deals with like what I talk about with the kitchen table. They had like an open-ended questionnaire from these people. So out of the 433 people, actually, let me go back real quick. They sent out 1,300. They got back 434 replies, but they could only use 433 because one of the replies, some jackass wrote his answers so extreme that they were like, this guy's just being a jerk, and they had to throw that one out. So only 433. But out of the 433, they had these open-ended questions at the end. And one of the guys said, he said, your crew is the only thing that will keep you sane with some of the calls that we go on. And that is so true because you talk to the guys at work. You talk to the girls at work. You talk to the people that know what you're going through. I talk to the guys at the kitchen table all the time. And that was my crew. And they're the ones that kept me sane for those runs and those stresses. So it's not an easy freaking job to deal with. There's so many stresses. The first responders see so many things that most normal people don't see on a daily basis. And dealing with that stress, alcohol consumption, drug abuse, thoughts of suicide, not being present at home, maybe physical abuse, maybe self-destructive behavior, all the above. And this survey just shows me that a lot of people are ignoring it. And that's not okay. The more we talk about this, the better it will be. The more aware we are of it, the better people will open up. If people see that other people are opening up about this and putting themselves out there, maybe that'll bring them to the forefront and go, you know what, I have a problem too. So it's just something to be said. You know, another survey, just some percentages, just something I wanted to look up. I'm going to keep trying to do that, doing my research, just so I don't sound like I'm talking out of my ass. But anyway, that's that part of the show. I got a story about when I was I've been saying a couple fire stories, but I have a story about when I was on the United States Park Police. So if you've been following the channel, you know that about my time in the academy, the police academy down in Georgia for the United States Park Police. I got on that job when I was 22 years old. And we were training in Georgia. It was a federal police job. If you don't know anything about the Park Police, the history is they were founded by George Washington in 1791. And they became the oldest uniformed federal law enforcement agency, or initially called Park Watchmen. So the main places the Park Police are Washington, D.C. is the main hub, because you got all the monuments there, you got all this National Park Service property. The United States Park Police are under the Department of the Interior, National Park Service. Now, there's a difference between park rangers and park police. Park rangers wear green and brown, park police wear blue and black. And park police have all urban parks, and they have all authority through city, state, and federal because they have to go from one park to the other. Park rangers are exclusive to just that one park, that one federal park. Their law enforcement capabilities, or them just, they're like rangers that just show people around. They bring people on guided tours. There's law enforcement rangers and there's other rangers. But Washington, D.C. is the main hub. And then the Park Police have two field offices, one in New York and one in San Francisco. So when I got out of the academy, went to D.C. for like 2 or 3 months just for some training, did a couple of events, but I didn't get stationed there. I got stationed in the New York field office. So you get to the New York field office, which is Jamaica Bay. Jamaica Bay is Floyd Bennett Field, Breezy Point, Cross Bay Boulevard, Staten Island's got some places. There's a bunch of areas in Jamaica Bay. It's Gateway National Recreation Area. Included in that is the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island. Those two lands are exclusive federal property. So they need park police on them, National Park Service property. So after your initial field training with officers on the street, driving the car, going over, writing tickets, locking people up, whatever, checking things, just learning how to be a street cop in field training. After that, after you pass field training, New York field office guys usually get sent to the Statue of Liberty because it's not that nobody wants to be there. It's just, it's very slow. You're not really making arrests. You're not really doing investigative stuff. You just kind of almost like an armed security guard, because the Statue of Liberty gets hundreds of thousands of people a year at the Statue of Liberty. So there's got to be law enforcement there. I mean, it's just packed with people. You got Park Service Rangers, you got Park Police, and you have all the people that work there, like all the concession people and stuff like that. So you have to have law enforcement on the Statue of Liberty. The reason why I bring up the Statue of Liberty is because I was assigned there. And while I was stationed there, while I was assigned there, a man leaped off the pedestal and killed himself, not too far from where I was standing. So and I don't mean to laugh because it's not funny. It not at all. It's just, it's a part of my life. It's the first time I grew up in Brooklyn, and I had seen a guy get shot. I'd seen somebody run over by a train. I'd seen some dead people, I guess, growing up. So it wasn't new to me, but it was the first time that I had to deal with somebody in that capacity. And I was the first officer on the scene. So let me set the stage for you. Working, what the Statue of Liberty does, you get all these people that come and visit the statue. They all want to walk to the crown. They all think that they can go to the torch, but they can't. That's been closed. That's been closed forever. There's a guy that goes up there to changes the light bulbs, but the general public is not allowed in the torch. You can go to the crown, and it's 354 steps from the pedestal to the crown, right? So all these people come in. You go to the pedestal. You can either go all the way up into the statue to the crown, get some pictures, look around. It's a great view, and come down. It's one way up and one way down. So at the end of the day, our closing procedures were, at a certain time, you get a ranger or a park policeman to stand behind the last person in line, because you timed it out with the boats, with the Circle Line boats, of people going up and down. And nobody's behind you. You can't let anybody in after that. So so when that guy comes down, everybody knows that there's nobody else left in the statue. And then we have a bunch of guys, we make our way down all the other stairs, and there's doors, and you're checking everything. It's a really good system to make sure that there's nobody left on the island at closing time. This particular day, I was standing down by the magnetometers, which is the very, very base of the statue when you walk in the front doors. You get off the boat and you walk down the pier, and then there's a concession stand, and there's the law enforcement office, and then you walk up to the statue itself. But you got to walk through doors, through magnetometers, so make sure nobody's got any weapons on them. Just security, just like you walk into an airport. I mean, you're not taking off your belt or your shoes or nothing like that, at least not back then. And this was June 1st, 1997. So this was pre 9/11, and we still had magnetometers there, because there was always threats against the Statue of Liberty. All the time, people were calling up and threatening bombs or whatever. It just was constant. So we always had magnetometers there. So there always had to be security. There was regular security guards, like a contracted out security company. And there was us, the law enforcement, Park Police, United States Park Police. So this particular day on June 1st, 1997, we were told that a man was out pickpocketing people on the boats to keep an eye on him. So we saw him and confronted him, questioned him. He didn't have anything on him. We got his name, we got his date of birth, everything. I spoke to this man personally. Walked up to him, got all his information, and he was clean. It was all good. Turns out he was from Senegal. He was 30 years old, and he was coming to visit the statue, and he wanted to go to the crown. Was he going to make it there? I'm not sure. Let him go. He goes through the magnetometer. He's no weapons. He's all good. We're like, all right, hey, boss, he's good to go. There's nothing, I got his information. He's good to go. So at this time, it's getting late. So we all go to our stations. Everybody had their own station of where they were supposed to be at closing time. I was on the pedestal called Fort Wood. So Fort Wood was like surrounded where the actual pedestal is. And then here's the pedestal, if you see it. And then the statue stands on the pedestal. and then goes up. So this guy got to the top of the pedestal right before you go into the statue itself. And it was closing time. Nobody else was allowed up there. But he was insisting on trying to get up to the crown. And the sergeant, who was at the pedestal at this time, was refusing. Said, you're not allowed to go up there. That's it. It's closing time, bro. It was like 5 o'clock or whatever time it was. You're not going. I'm sorry. You came a long way. You can't make it. We can't do it. It's too late. So apparently this guy just freaked out and was just yelling that he had to get to the crown. And he just took off and ran right out the door. And the sergeant chased him and he jumped right off the top of the pedestal. And he went head first down to where I was standing. Boom. He hits the parapet and lands into Fort Wood. Now where I was standing, around Fort Wood, I believe there was 4 doors. So I was standing by one door and I could see straight out to the other door. It was probably 35 to 50 feet away, maybe even less. So you could see right out. So I hear over the radio, he jumped, we got a jumper down. And sure enough, as that was going on, I looked straight ahead and the guy hit. I could see right through the door, he hit head first and crumbled right into the part of the Fort Wood pedestal. So I run around and I'm on the radio. I'm like, he's down here, Fort Wood. It was about 80 to 100 feet where he jumped. And he landed head first. And the reason why I know he landed head first is because his teeth were on the pedestal. It blew my mind. Now, if you've been following the show, I'm still at this point, I am about 8 months removed from the accident that I was in. And I was just in such a terrible headspace still. And then running around and seeing this guy and then flipping him over and checking his pulse. I had to tell everybody, he's down here, Fort Wood. He's down at Fort Wood. And it was a good few minutes before anybody else got there. But in my eyes, he was absolutely dead. There was no coming back from this at all. So it was the first time that I had to deal with a situation like this in a law enforcement capacity, that I was supposed to do something. Like I said, I had seen other dead bodies and stuff like that growing up. It wasn't that big of a deal. But being the guy that has to respond and the first one and making the first transmissions and the first person to touch him, a guy that I spoke to for a couple of minutes, that got his story, that got his information, that knew his name. To me, and being in that state of mind at that time, I didn't know actually what to do. And then the EMT showed up and we had flipped the guy over already. And then he starts CPR. And I was like, dude, look at his head. He's not coming back. He's like, we have to do this. We can't pronounce a guy dead at the Statue of Liberty. I said, all right. So did CPR, got him on the gurney and then got him out to the boat, doing CPR the whole way, knowing full well that he wasn't coming back. So got him on a boat, got him into the city. But from that point, no one had killed themselves on the Statue of Liberty since 1929 and then 1932, I believe. That's the history that I got. The one I see a lot is 1929, but 1932 I don't see too much. So the details are sketchy about those two, but this one for sure. June 1st, 1997, a man leaps to his death on the Statue of Liberty and lands about 50 feet away from me. And I was the first officer on scene. I was the first one to touch him. I had a conversation with the guy. I couldn't, and going through and being in my mental state, I couldn't fathom what was going through this guy's mind. He came from Senegal. I believe he had an address in Queens at the time. He was 30 years old. I'm not going to say his name, but you can probably Google it. What he was going through his life and his mind and in his world where he wanted to get to the crown. He wanted to jump from the crown. I mean, if he could have got to the torch, he probably would have jumped from the torch. But just thinking about what somebody was going through to want to leap to their death from one of the most iconic symbol of America there is, the Statue of Liberty. To him, that was something in his mind that would, I don't know. I just don't know what, it just so high profile that would have been. And you know what? It was kind of swept under the rug. The New York Times came out and they interviewed myself and they interviewed my sergeant. But I don't know. I just don't know what that guy was thinking. And it just, from that day on, for a long time, I just had that, 1,000-yard stare when I was standing at the statue, just looking out over all these people, just trying to fathom what this guy was going through and what he was thinking, and kind of feeling the same way at the time. Kind of feeling like, shit, what if I did something like that? Like, this guy's family, they were probably going through after they heard this, after they got in touch with his family. And who knows where his family, he's from Senegal, but living in Queens for a little while. I just don't know. So it really played havoc on my psyche for a while. It didn't help. It certainly didn't help what I was going through at all. I just couldn't understand. He probably had nowhere else to turn, nowhere to go. He probably had no money. They said that he was pickpocketing people. He didn't have anything on him. He had nothing. This poor guy had nothing. Couldn't get back to his family. Who knows? So you just never know. You just never know what somebody's going through. No matter where they're from, what race they are, what religion, you never know. And if they had nowhere to turn, nowhere to help, maybe he had nobody step up to him and go, hey man, you okay? What's going on? Because when I talked to him, he was like, no, I'm seeing the statue. I just want to get to the top. I was like, all right. He was clean. It was all good. He was a gentleman. He was a nice guy. There was no reason for us to detain him after that. And that was it. And then he gets up to the pedestal and decides at that moment, maybe it was just impulsive. Maybe he just lost it at that moment. He couldn't control himself. Did he have second thoughts on the way down? I don't know. It's just so hard to know what's going on in somebody's mind. So, and that's kind of what I was saying with that survey that I was talking about earlier. People don't really bring it up because they can't see what you got going on in your mind. They can't see your depression. They can't see your sadness or your anxiety or your deep, dark thoughts. They can see the broken leg. They can see the broken ankle or the scars or whatever. They can see those and they can ask you about those. But nobody asks about your mind. Or too few people ask about your mind. So that's just something that I'm trying to bring awareness to. Look out for people. Get to know them. Know if you know somebody close enough, they're changing their habits or their expressions, reach out. Ask them if they're okay. And let them know that it is okay to not be okay. It's okay to ask for help. It's okay to discuss your feelings, especially the feelings of sadness and depression. And most first responders all consider themselves like alpha males or alpha females, whatever you want to call it, who think that they're too strong. They don't want to show weakness by talking about this. But it's not talked about enough. And if we could just get out there and save a couple people, save one person, and just bring it to light. Let's help each other out. Let's have a great day. The sun is out. It's Monday, but the sun is out. So I just want to tell you guys, thanks so much. Like the channel, subscribe to the channel, follow it if you're on Apple, Spotify, or Amazon. Share it. Please share it. Let's share it and get the word out. Thanks for the support. And remember, it must be true if you heard it at the kitchen table. I'll see you at the big one.